So when Honda first revealed the 10th generation Honda Civic back in September of 2015, I was a senior in high school and I was sitting in English class watching the event on my phone. And when the covers came off that car, I absolutely lost my mind. I couldn't believe this car I was looking at was a Honda Civic because it didn't look like anything they had put out before. Two thoughts immediately came to mind. The first was that this car looked way nicer than anything that Acura had going on at that time. And the second thought was just simply, I must have this car. Don't know how I'm going to do that, but I must have this car. And with a lot of patience, roughly a year later, I made it happen. I got that car, and let me tell you, it was the best feeling I've ever had, and I have not been able to replicate it since. But time stops for nobody, and now 7 years later, it has since been replaced by the next version of the vehicle, and now it's part of the past just like everything else. So does this make for the perfect used car? That's what we're going to find out today. Before we get into it, I want to give a quick shout out to Paul Miller Honda of West Caldwell, New Jersey, which is where I bought my Civic back in 2016. Now let's talk design because there's a lot to talk about. And throughout this video, keep in mind that this is just the EX trim, which was only one trim above the base model of this car. This was a very revolutionary and edgy design when it came out. It was received well by most people, but of course it didn't please everyone. And I can understand where some of those people were coming from because I was never a fan of the hatch or the coupe versions of this generation Civic. I thought they had kind of strange looking rear ends, but I always thought the boomerang lights on the sedan were really cool and that they were done well. These lights make the car instantly identifiable at night from a distance away, and there's no other car that you would mistake them for. The front daytime running lights aren't quite as unique in design, but still give the front fascia its signature look. Now, chrome aside, the front grille definitely creates a flashy presence out on the road. On this trim, there's simple halogen headlights and incandescent turn signals, but I upgraded all of my lights to LED, including the front and rear. Coming up the side, there's some pretty sharp creases and character lines in the bodywork, and with them being angled upwards towards the rear, it kind of gives an illusion that the car is in motion even when it's not, which I think is cool. Let's talk about these wheels because this is a sore spot for some people. These are 16-inch alloys and not everyone is a fan. In the 10th Gen Civic Facebook group, they refer to these as the fan blades, and they get a lot of hate. Personally, I like the design of them. I just wish they were 17s or 18s instead. The tires this is running on are 215/55/16 Firestone FT140s, and that's an all-season tire. The overall side profile of this vehicle is pretty cool. It's not shaped like a traditional sedan, and it's got this fastback design to it, a lot like an Audi A7. It's another illusion of the Civic, and it makes the car look like a hatchback as opposed to a sedan. This has a really nice low and wide stance, and these wide wheel arches really give it presence. And 15.1 cubic feet of space in the trunk is more than enough, and you do not need to see the disaster inside my trunk. Taking a look under the hood here is a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine putting out 158 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque. Now, are these numbers impressive? No, but it's adequate for what this is, and that's a base engine compact sedan. Fuel economy ratings are combined 35 miles per gallon. That's 31 city and 41 highway. Capacity of the fuel tank is 12.39 gallons, and man am I glad that this is the car I've had the last 2 years with these wild ass gas prices. For context, we gotta remember that this car is from 2016, so certain things were very impressive for the time, but they still do hold up against today's technology. I'm mainly talking about Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. These were relatively new technologies back in 2016, and the fact that Honda included them in the second trim on its entry-level vehicle is kinda mind-blowing if you think about it. Along with that, my other favorite features are the push-button start, remote start, and the power moonroof. I've always got that thing on no matter how cold it is outside. And I've always felt a cool spaceship-y kind of vibe from this digital gauge cluster. Again, wasn't all that common back then. You usually only found that in more expensive luxury cars. The way that this center screen is integrated into the console was done really well. Newer cars now just have the screen slapped onto the very top of the dash, and to me it just looks like an afterthought. The storage space is pretty generous in here, and I like the configurability of the center console. You can move the cup holders, take them out, there's another bigger one underneath, there's a change tray, and you could slide the armrest to a back or a more forward position, so there's a lot you can do with it. I also really like this cable management system in the back here that lets the wires run down to the ports down in this lower portion, where there's even more room to put smaller items. The climate controls are simple and straightforward. One knob is for temperature and the other is for fan speed. Pressing the climate button brings up the different zones, and the buttons below work your defrosters and recirculating settings. The quality of this interior was something that was widely praised, especially in comparison to the Civic before it. Now, before I get further into the interior, I want to explain what I've done to the car. The EX sedan comes from the factory with a cloth interior, but I had an aftermarket interior swap done with cat skin upholstery. So I've had this nice leather in here since June of 2020, and it's been holding up great ever since. The upper parts of the door panels and dashboard have soft touch points and aren't hard plastic, but the lower parts are another story. As expected, we're talking about an economy car. Rear door panels are all hard plastic, and it is what it is. The backup camera has 3 different angle views, a wide, a standard, and a top-down. The quality could be a lot better, but it serves its purpose. The last sore spot I'm going to address on this design is something I think is dumb as hell for people to be upset about, and that's the lack of a volume knob. This has never bothered me whatsoever, and I like this little scroll pad on the left side of the steering wheel. You just drag your finger up and down to change the volume, and a quick swipe from top to bottom instantly mutes the audio. I also drive with my left hand, which means I never even have to take my hand off the wheel to mess with the volume. So now I'm sitting in the back right behind where I have my driver's seat adjusted for myself at 6 feet tall, and you can see I actually have room to spare. There's 34.7 inches of legroom back here, nice padded center armrest, and a good sized pocket behind the passenger seat. Now it's time to hop in that driver's seat and see how this thing drives. Alright, so we are behind the wheel of the 2016 Honda Civic. First thing I want to go over is the ride quality. So the first time I drove this car, I was blown away by how smooth it rides, how forgiving the suspension is, and my expectations were set pretty low because I've driven other compact sedans like the Corolla, the Sentra, the Elantra, the Mazda 3, the Ford Focus, and so on and so on, and I expected this car would ride similar to those because, you know, they were in the same price point, same category, but nope, not even close. The Civic, the ride quality of the Civic is unmatched in its category, and I can honestly compare the ride quality to that of my mom's Acura TSX, and I think that was the really surprising part for me because I was used to the way that car rode, and then once I finally got into a Civic, it was like, wow, it's almost the same. Kind of makes sense because, you know, they're made by the same company, but still, they're very different though at the same time. So with this car, you're getting a really nice, smooth riding car for a very good price. Something else also that's really convenient in here is you have this button here called brake hold. I press that button, you get the alert that the standby system is on, and now I'm here at a red light. I take my foot off the brake, and now I can just chill till it's green. And then once you hit the gas again, when it turns green, then the system disengages, and then you can be on your way. So now let's get a little taste of how the acceleration is. So what we're gonna do is gonna put it into sport mode, and when I do that, you can really hear the engine open up, and it's gonna hold those RPMs much higher. You can see now through here, it's holding it at roughly the 2500 range, and as soon as we get around this corner right here, we're gonna give it a push and see how this thing goes. All right, let's push it. So as you can see, when you're already in motion, the car is no problem picking up speed. And this is something that's really important, especially if you're driving on the highway and you need to quickly get up to the pace of traffic, if you need to pass somebody, or if somebody's getting too close to you and you need to get away from them. Now, from a dead stop, the car, again, 0 to 60, 8.7 seconds, not impressive whatsoever. But this car isn't meant for that. You just need to be able to pick up speed when necessary. It's not a race car. If you want a race car, get the Type R. This base engine car is not gonna wow you at all in, you know, regards to a acceleration from a stop. It's not what it's for. So that was just a sample of the audio. This system is just a basic 4-speaker system. Now, if you get higher trim level of the Civic, you will get a more powerful system with more speakers. But I think it's important, at least, to just get an idea of what these lower end systems sound like, because a lot of the sales numbers that Honda's doing are these lower end models. So you're gonna have a big demographic of people using this on a daily basis, so it's good to just have an idea of how it is. And I think for most people, it's just fine. Now, what we have in this car is a CVT transmission, so not a traditional automatic. Most cars in this segment have CVT transmissions. The main reason manufacturers use them is for fuel economy, but that's at the sacrifice of performance. When you accelerate, as you heard in the acceleration clip, you don't hear any kind of gear shifts during acceleration because there are none. There's no gears in the system. Many manufacturers in their CVT transmissions will try to put something in there that like simulates gear shifts, but I'll be honest, in this one I'm just not hearing it. I'm not feeling it. I can't tell. It just has that typical droney, whiny CVT sound. So now I've come out here to my favorite back road so that I could throw this thing into some corners so I could show you guys how this thing handles. And there go my keys. Yeah, the steering and handling of the Civic is really good, especially in these tight corners here. The steering, it's precise, it's direct, it has good weight to it, and it goes exactly where you think it's gonna go. Same for the braking, coming on these steep declines here. Good braking, very important. And the braking is very smooth on this car. To another corner. Now, every time I throw this into a corner, there's just like great confidence because you know the car's gonna handle it just well. No body roll, no slipping, none of that. It's just planted and it's solid. So that's going to wrap up the test drive of the 2016 Honda Civic, and I hope that this video is able to give you some insight and help you determine maybe whether or not this is the vehicle for you. Alright, now let's wrap this up. All in all, this is a very solid car, and in 6 years of ownership, the only problem I ever encountered was a dead battery that failed in the blazing hot heat, and nothing ever since. This is a vehicle you can count on to get you where you need to go and not spend a fortune to maintain or spend endless time getting repairs done. Despite the inflation of the car market, there's a lot of value in this Honda Civic. Before I end this video, I just want to acknowledge that this is the very first video on the Optical Automotive YouTube channel, so I thank you so much for clicking on this video and supporting me at the beginning of my journey here. Hopefully in 5 years, I won't look back at this video and cringe. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and tell me your thoughts on the 10th Gen Civic down in the comments. I'll be replying to everyone. And subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to see more reviews like this, because lots of new content is planned and in the works. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.